Yep, it's really come to this. Today we're looking at attractions. So disclaimer, no, I haven't run out of ideas, it's actually good, proving that, like Initiative, never discount some random weird mechanic made for Commander players to break into Legacy. Attractions can be built a number of ways, with this Sultai mid-range list coming to us from player Bryce. But before we get into any of it, I should explain what attractions are and how they work for the uninitiated. In the Unfinity set, there was a new card subtype introduced called Attractions, and just like stickers, Wizards in their infinite wisdom decided they should be Legacy legal. Certain cards, which we'll get to later, instruct you to open an attraction, which means to take the top card of your attraction deck and put it onto the battlefield. The attraction deck is a separate deck made up entirely of attractions that you shuffle at the beginning of the game, just like your regular deck. But it's not a part of your main deck nor sideboard, it's its own thing. It must be singleton, meaning you can't have more than one copy of any specific attraction, and it must be at least 10 cards. So pick the best 10 attractions and run only those. The attractions themselves are 0 mana artifacts that have various abilities. As you'll see on the right sides of the cards, there are numbers 1 through 6, with some being lit up and some not. Attractions work similarly to how sagas do. As long as you have an attraction on the battlefield, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you roll a die. If the result matches any of the lit up numbers on the attraction, you trigger its effect. If you have multiple attractions, you choose the order their abilities resolve in. For every attraction card, 1 is always a miss and 6 is always a hit. However, since this is an unset, individual attraction cards can have different numbers lit up. It's always the same amount of numbers, so there isn't a strictly better version of the card, but that doesn't mean there's no decision to be made. Since you can pick the numbers, there's a choice to make. Do you have more overlapping numbers between your various attractions in order to maximize the value you get when you make a successful roll with multiple of them on the battlefield? Or do you diversify the numbers so that you're less likely to miss completely? According to Bryce, you want to diversify since it's bad when you roll and get nothing. Okay, so what do these attractions actually do? There are many to choose from, but there are only around 10 to 12 that are the best ones. To go through them, Balloon Stand makes a 1/1 balloon token with flying. Bounce Chamber bounces the opponent's creature with the lowest toughness. Ferris Wheel phases out a creature until you roll 3 or less. Foam Weapons Kiosk puts a +1 counter on one of your creatures and gives it vigilance. Haunted House returns a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, gives it haste, and exiles it at the end step, so it's kind of like Goryo's Vengeance or Shallow Grave. Information Booth just straight up draws a card, always good. Roller Coaster gives your creatures +2 power. Storybook Ride exiles cards from the top of your library equal to the number of attractions you visited this turn, so always at least 1. You can play them the same turn, and if you don't, they go to the bottom. Swinging Ship gives you an extra combat step and untaps all your attackers. Trash Bin mills 2 cards from your library, and then you return a random card from your graveyard to your hand. For Tunnel of Love, you choose a creature your opponent controls and they choose one of yours. You can then either flicker both or have them fight. And lastly, Pick a Beeble. Okay, this one requires some explanation. You make a treasure token and you roll a die. Pick a Beeble gets counters equal to the result, and once you get to 6 counters, you claim the prize, making 2 more treasures. Oh, I should explain what claiming the prize means. Some attractions have a prize to claim which is based on some condition, in this case getting to 6 counters. Whenever you claim a prize, the attraction closes down and you open a new attraction. Oh yeah, attractions don't go to the graveyard, they go to the junkyard. For all intents and purposes, this basically means they're gone forever since the junkyard is just a separate graveyard that nothing interacts with. Okay, all these attractions sound great, you say, but how do you actually open them? Well, there are many cards that do that, but the best ones are Deadbeat Attendant, a 2 mana black 1/1 that opens 1 when it enters the battlefield. DK, a 3 mana blue-black 1/4 legendary creature that opens 1 when it enters and has 3 additional abilities based on dice rolls. Whenever you roll 2, drain 1 life. Whenever you roll 4, tap or untap an artifact or creature. And whenever you roll 6, return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. Then there's the Most Dangerous Gamer, a 4 mana green-black 2/2 legendary creature with Death Touch and multiple other abilities. When it enters or attacks, open an attraction, so it's the Primeval Titan of attractions. Whenever you open an attraction, it gets a +1 counter, so it always starts as a 3/3. And whenever you claim a prize, destroy target permanent. This last ability will only come up exceptionally rarely since Pick a Beeble is the only Legacy legal attraction with a prize to claim. And lastly, Myra the Magnificent is a 4 mana Izzet 2/4 legendary creature that says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery from your hand, open an attraction. She also has X mana and tap, exile target instant or sorcery with mana value X from your graveyard and choose an attraction you control that doesn't have a midway counter on it. put a counter on it, and whenever you visit it, cast a free copy of the exiled card. There are many more attraction-enabling cards, but as far as legacy playability goes, those are the best ones. Now, you may notice that 3 out of the 4 of them are based in the Sultai colors. This is why attraction decks so far have been separated into either Izzet Spellslinger decks that use just Myra as a value piece, or blue-black midrange decks that use the other ones. In this case, we're looking at a Sultai midrange deck. Yep, we're finally getting to what this deck actually does. So just looking this list over, if you separated out the attraction cards, this would look like a fairly typical Sultai midrange deck that's using a combination of cantrips, removal spells, force of will, and value cards like Snapcaster Mage, Baleful Strix, and Uro. The attraction creatures add in more value generation via the attractions they open, and Most Dangerous Gamer can be a legitimate threat on its own. Kaido Dancing Shadow deserves a special mention for how good he is in this deck. His triggered ability that lets you double up activations by bouncing an attacker works well with the various cheap creatures with ETB effects that are in the deck, such as Snapcaster, Deadbeat Attendant, and Baleful Strix in particular, which lets you sometimes draw 3 cards a turn. Lastly, some specific notes on attractions that didn't fit elsewhere. Even though you want to diversify which numbers are lit up on the various attractions, you'll still wind up with some overlap. Some attractions work well in combination and some are non-bows. For example, Roller Coaster and Foam Weapons Kiosk add more power to your creatures, whereas neither one is particularly good with Tunnel of Love since, more often than not, you'll be flickering your creature rather than fighting, thus negating the power boost. So make sure you overlap numbers on attractions that synergize with each other and diversify the ones that don't. For Tunnel of Love, you or your opponent still choose a creature even if one of you doesn't control one. If you run out of attractions, that's it, there's no way to recycle them. Remember that attractions are 0 mana artifacts and thus can be interacted with in all the typical ways you would, like Meltdown, EE, etc. And finally, this is a public service announcement. There are effects that let you get creatures from your opponent's deck, such as Reanimate. Since attraction creatures exist, even if you're not running any yourself, it's now technically correct to have your own attraction deck just in case you reanimate one or get them some other way. So have fun, Reanimator and Death Shadow players! I hope you've enjoyed this look at attractions. I certainly did. Thank you to my supporters, and if you enjoy these videos, consider supporting the channel, and take care.